Good morning, everyone. This is Lise Robinson. I'm the administrator for the Grief After the Loss of a Loved One. And today I have a special guest named Jay. Now, Jay, where are you from, by the way?
I'm originally from New Jersey, but I live in the Hudson Valley, New York.
Okay. So, the purpose of this interview today is because Jay is a very unique human being. He's come through so much in his life. And I just wanted to ask Jay, what's inspired you to be where you're at today in your life? Uh, I appreciate all the sharing that you do in our group, in our Facebook group. And I just wanted to speak to you about your personal experience and the impact that it's had on your personal life and how this can help many other people.
Well, I guess my story starts out. I was a child of divorce. My parents hated each other, and that had a huge impact on my life and my sister's life as well. Um, I went back and forth from living with my mom and my dad until the time came to go away to college, where I met the love of my life. It was love at first sight, Larissa. And we were together for 26 years. We had a wonderful life living all over the world. We had two amazing children. And then she lost her battle with depression and took her own life. That, as with most of the people viewing this, it broke me, it destroyed me. All of my hopes and dreams for the future and for the future of my children was taken away in a single moment. And for almost 5 years, I struggled battling grief, depression, anxiety, walking in the darkness. And one day I had a moment at the cemetery, a moment of clarity, so to speak, where I felt her presence and I felt her apologize. And I was left standing there with nothing but that unconditional love. And that feeling motivated me to change the sad story that I was telling myself every day and to do whatever I needed to do to live a life of unconditional love and acceptance and gratitude, and to no longer allow the past and the grief and the stigma of suicide to define me or my children's lives.
How powerful is that? And this is exactly why I wanted you to come on this in this group and share your story because it's very impactful and motivating. For those of you that are suffering right now, you don't need to suffer. There's people out here that have gone through a lot of losses. So I appreciate you sharing your story. So, the impact of the initial emotions and thoughts. What were your initial emotions and thoughts after your wife's passing?
Well, with suicide, it's a little bit different than other types of loss. One thing those suffering from that level of depression become is they become professionals at hiding the truth. For 26 years, I knew she had depression because she was on various medications, but as a normal, healthy person, I really had no concept of what depression truly was. And at that moment, when the police came to the door holding a photo of her tattoo and an empty bottle of Xanax, it was almost like a moment on America's Got Talent where they hit the golden buzzer and all the confetti starts falling. For me, it was all the red flags that I had not seen, not been aware of for the 26 years. And it was literally like getting hit with a sledgehammer. Instantly all of the could have, should haves, would haves. What if I did this? What if we didn't have that argument that night? What if I said I love you instead of get out? Or, all of the imaginary scenarios that I was trying to create in my mind as a way of resisting what happened. And the longer I resisted acceptance, the longer I created my own pain and suffering.
So, what I understand from you is that the responsibility of your emotional state at that point in time was explosive, like being hit
Absolutely.
with an explosion that is totally uncontrollable, that goes through
Absolutely.
every fiber of your being.
Exactly. It was like I was standing beside myself and had absolutely zero control over the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings. And, my emotional response was, normal. A lot of people don't understand that everything about grief is normal. The anger, the sadness, the regret, the blame, the finger pointing, it's all a normal, healthy part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to actually go through the process and feel those feelings and acknowledge them and sit with them until they don't elicit the same emotional responses anymore. For almost 5 years, I believed those memes and those comments and those things that people who are still stuck say, and I still see it in a lot of the grief support groups today, like grief is love with no place to go, or it never gets easier, you just learn to live with it, or, you know, I'll never be happy again, I'll never be loved again, I was robbed of my future. All of these things that we tell ourselves that our brain has no choice but to respond with negative emotional experiences. And it took me challenging those beliefs and those statements and actually creating an intention to prove them wrong that
Mm-hmm.
got me on a different path.
Absolutely. Like it sounds to me like your mind had to shift and your emotions. And it's like those intentions can really help to mitigate some of those day to day thoughts and things that we put into our minds.
Absolutely. If not all, a lot of people say, grief comes in waves. And, as a child, I lived on the Jersey Shore and I learned to surf. And one of the things that I learned is you have no control over the waves, but whether you swim into the wave or let it pass determines your ride.
Absolutely.
So I had to tell myself, I am not a victim of these waves. I can either allow them to pass under me, I can allow them to hit me full force and shove my face in the sand at the bottom, gasping for air, or I could swim into them and jump up on the board and enjoy the ride. And like I said, it took me years to get to the point where I was ready to start challenging my grief and to actually face it and stop avoiding it before I was able to make that choice to swim into the wave and ride it to shore instead of repeatedly let them bash me and try to drown me.
Fantastic. It sounds like you did a crisscross effect and it took you a while to get there. I and
Well, a lot of people say that grief has no timeline and that it lasts forever. And, for me, it was that moment in the cemetery where all of those emotions came to a head and exploded. And being, standing there left with just that feeling of love, none of it mattered anymore. I was so grateful for the 26 years that I had with her, for my children, for the fact that I'm still here to experience the life that I'm meant to live. That, like you said, I had a shift in my mindset and my way of thinking, that I was no longer looking behind me and trying to change the past or grieve for what could have been in the future. And
mhm.
I decided to just keep moving forward for me, for my children, and for her.
Yes, that's so, so important. Speaking about your children, sometimes parents, they take on the hero narrative, like their mom is not there anymore, and how can I be the best? How can I be the two people for these kids so that they don't miss out?
Absolutely. My daughter was 3 and my son was 13 at the time. My son was a mama's boy. He loved his mom and it hit him really hard. And honestly, for the first few months, I was incapable of even taking care of myself. My stepmother flew down from Florida and stayed with us for several weeks, helped get my daughter into daycare, helped get my son into the children's bereavement group at our local hospice, which was a lifesaver. And basically to cook, clean, walk the dog, feed the dog, because I was literally in a ball on the floor crying uncontrollably. And, brain fog, the widow's fog is a real thing. It's the body's response to that fight or flight, and the chemical responses prevent the brain from actually being able to think cognitively. And, I was defining myself, my present, and my future through that lens of grief. So once that initial shock wore off, I knew that I was all my children had left. Her family blamed me. Uh, my mom and my sister are toxic, so I had to cut them out of my life, because of the divorce and my upbringing, my childhood. We just didn't travel the same paths towards healing. And I really had to be a mom and a dad to my children and make sure that they got to experience everything that a normal child would.
Kudos to you. That is huge
Thank
because breaking through those moments of uh, being there for your children has, I'm sure, impacted them tremendously in healing their own grief.
Yes, absolutely. My son is going to be 22 this week. My daughter is 12. My son has an amazing girlfriend. He has a great job. Both of my kids are happy and they love life and they don't think of things as missing. They think of life is exactly as it is supposed to be. And, we don't allow the calendar to dictate, our thoughts and feelings. For the first few years we did, the anniversary dates, the birthday, the anniversary of the loss played a huge role in our emotional state and what we did. But now they're just days, they're just words and numbers on the calendar and they don't affect us anymore. We
Hmm.
remember her every day just the same.
Yes, enjoying life in the moment
Yes,
is what a lot of people
absolutely.
call it. And I can empathize with you because I've gone through a similar situation. However, my son's father died in a house fire
Oh,
in 2010, and it took days, literally days, to identify his body and to say it was him. And that was the most agonizing for us.
I'm
And
sure.
I know that becoming the hero for them too, just as you're saying, took some effort on parents. And it's almost like we have to shift into that gear of healing faster to be a step ahead of them. And
One thing that I did that looking back on, I wish I didn't, is I put on that mask,
oh,
that
yes.
pretending to be okay for the kids, not allowing them
Hmm.
to see me grieve, waiting till they were asleep and then sneaking out to the bar. And what I learned is that by hiding my true authentic self, I wasn't teaching them the proper coping skills to deal with the loss. And as much as it hurt me to openly expose my feelings in front of them, I knew that it was very important, especially for my son as a man, to learn that it's okay not to be okay, and that it's okay to cry, and that it's okay to feel sad, and that it's okay to allow those feelings come to the surface. I mean, there were times where, I'd be at the supermarket with my kids and I'd go to reach for her favorite cereal and I would just start sobbing uncontrollably, and people would be looking and pointing and whispering, and I just learned to not care what other people think because they have no idea what we've been through.
Thank you for sharing that because I think a lot of people in our audience here could empathize with you because they have triggers, different things that cause us triggers and how to work through it. Your response of going to the bar and masking the pain through, alcohol, or, well, alcohol is a drug, is a coping mechanism that often people go to. And I would say possibly more male, because a lot
Mhm.
of men don't talk about grief. And I appreciate and thank you so much for coming here and telling your raw truth,
Thank you.
because I feel that you can help to shape other men to break through those patterns. And asking for help is not a weakness. For myself,
Absolutely not. It's a strength.
yeah.
Asking to get out of trouble the easy way by asking for help is definitely a strength. And it's something that I didn't do. And I wasted almost 5 years of my life hiding at the bar 7 nights a week, drinking away my pain, drugging away my pain, trying to numb it as a coping mechanism instead of actually expressing myself honestly and working through the emotions and the feelings and getting to that point where they no longer triggered me.
So your response is very different than mine. So I went with my sons to see a therapist. However, my older son still continued with the drinking and everything because he was in university at that time. He had to drop out, but his coping mechanism of choice was drinking. Eventually, he quit, though, thank goodness, and was able to get back into university. My other son absolutely quit the drinking and has been clean and sober ever since. And for myself, I rarely touch this stuff, and therapy for me was really helping me to be the best I could be for my kids. And being that example, now it's like they're walking into the same footsteps that their mom is taking on. So kudos to you for coming through all of that, because I'm sure it wasn't easy. Did you eventually go for therapy?
No, I didn't. I had a really bad experience with therapy as a child. And in my years of research and study in neuroscience and neurobiology, I've found that a lot of therapists who are licensed to practice medicine come into the session with their own thoughts, beliefs, opinions, and sometimes therapy is more about talking about the past and the trauma itself instead of actually ways to get through it and heal from it. I feel
Hmm.
that therapy is more focused on what was and less focused on what will be. So for me, it was not something that I thought would help me in the way that I needed.
Thank you for sharing, because it's not for everyone.
Absolutely. And
I
I'm not saying therapy doesn't work for some because, for some it's a guiding light and it's exactly what they need. And if you find the right therapist, which is very important, then that's fantastic. But for me, it was something that I had to do in isolation. I had to learn to do the work myself and learn to change my thoughts, my responses, face my triggers head on, and to pretty much leave the past in the past and start embracing the present and the future.
So, what was specifically, what was your best healing mechanism for yourself?
For me personally, it was learning emotional awareness,
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness, meditation,
Mm-hmm.
and learning that our triggers are not things that we should run from, but instead they're gifts from
Mm-hmm.
our subconscious mind that show us what we still need to work on and heal. And probably the biggest thing was letting go of my need for external validation. And, for all that time that I spent at the bar, I was seeking people to accept me, people to love me, people to give me all of the things that I was missing in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that I can create all of those things from within.
We are all human beings, and I think we all have a resiliency mechanism within us.
Yes.
Some people have a little bit more of a difficult time and see doctors, and sometimes are prescribed antidepressants when they're going through this time.
Yes. Well, one
However,
thing that I learned, in my
yes,
research and my 26 years with someone who was on antidepressants,
mm-hmm,
one of the things that I've spent a lot of time looking into is there are zero medications approved by the FDA for grief.
mm-hmm,
It's not a mental illness. It
no,
is a normal human emotional
on,
response to trauma and loss.
yes,
Antidepressants, which were originally created in 1959 to treat tuberculosis,
mm-hmm,
do not address the thoughts, the beliefs, the constant rumination in what was and what isn't. All they do is numb the emotional responses to those thoughts, and they actually prevent us from feeling the things we need to feel in order to heal.
and the one thing that I can say too, as a social worker, I never wanted to have anything mask my emotions,
Absolutely.
because at some point we have to face head on what we're going through.
Hmm. Well, I do acknowledge that antidepressants do help some people get through that initial
Period.
onslaught of
Yes.
uncontrollable grief.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think maybe it would have helped me and reduced my grieving time, but at the same time, I'm kind of proud of myself for not using the chemicals. But I did use alcohol and drugs, so it's kind of the same thing. I was trying
Mm-hmm.
to mask and numb the pain, but once I stopped, everything was still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with antidepressants, if you don't stay on them for your entire life, the day you stop, all of those emotions and stress chemicals and beliefs and feelings are all sitting there waiting for you. And the
Yes.
sooner that you face them, the sooner that you start to heal.
Mm-hmm. We're not physicians and we're not advocating not to utilize them. However, there's a time and place for everything, and there are other ways to help to heal. I know for
Absolutely.
myself, one of them was nature. Nature
Oh,
really
absolutely.
helped me to heal, listening to the water, going into the bush, grounding myself. Those were mechanisms
Absolutely.
that were very helpful. So I appreciate you sharing that information about the coping mechanisms through medication, that there is
Mhm.
a time and place that it can be utilized. So for your children, did they engage in, like you were saying something about your son going for therapy at the hospital?
My son did go to a behavioral therapist because he was having trouble in school, but I believe that that was caused by antidepressants. My son's primary care physician believed that depression is a chemical imbalance that runs in the family, which has been proven incorrect numerous times. Suggested very early into our grief that he go on Zoloft as a preventative,
Hmm.
and it affected him horribly. He was very social, very friendly, very outgoing, and he started locking himself in his room in the dark, not going to school, not doing his assignments. So I started bringing him to a behavioral therapist who said he was a normal kid going through a really shitty time.
Wow.
And I also enrolled him in a free service at our local hospice, which was life-changing for all of us, called the Children's Bereavement Group. And the reason I believe it was so important and essential in his healing is because instead of talking to an adult who never experienced what he did, he was in a room full of other kids who lost a loved one. And they got to talk about their feelings and their experience and their emotions while being guided by the social workers and end of life caregivers at hospice. And he enjoyed it so much that he went for 3.5 years, and they asked him to become a junior counselor because of the changes in him and how helpful he was with getting the other kids to talk. And my daughter, who was too young to attend, started going when she was 6, and she went for about 6 months. And they said, she wasn't grieving. She was very young when she lost her mom. So they, told me that the kids are great, they're doing fine, and they're ready to move on.
Outstanding. That's miraculous when a
Yes,
child can move into that role of being a
yes,
junior counselor because peers tend to navigate towards peers.
yes,
And when they know the answers of what another person is going through, those are the most life changing moments for those other
absolutely.
children.
He was instrumental in getting new kids to the group to open up and express themselves.
That's fantastic. With my sons, they both interacted differently to healing, and one was into comedy. So he created a comedy set on healing grief through comedy, and he had a resounding audience of about 200 in New Zealand when we were there.
Oh, wow,
It was
that's great.
absolutely phenomenal. And my other son was into academics, so he got his degree in Bachelor of Science, very brilliant young man, but coped very differently once again. So all these different healing mechanisms, we need them all. And
Yes, we
another thing too I want to emphasize, sometimes there's different cultures that have different healing modalities that really is
absolutely,
helpful. So sweat lodges for us and smudging, cleaning, cleansing our home, moving that energy was really important.
absolutely.
Do you have any cultural healing mechanisms that you utilize or practices that you utilize for healing in your home?
Um, During my healing process, I was fortunate enough to experience a spiritual awakening. For most of my life, I was raised Jewish, and for most of my life, I was atheist. I didn't believe in anything, and I had they call it the veil is lifted, and I began to see and experience things that I never believed in before. And I got into spirituality and crystals and meditation, earthing, grounding, walking in nature, smudging, focusing on my energy and my vibrational frequency. And that helped tremendously with my mindfulness and self-awareness practice, and becoming aware of the thoughts that I was allowing into my focus that were creating the emotions I was experiencing, and how to look at my energy and where I am vibrationally, and asking myself, is this what you desire to experience in this moment? If yes, keep doing it. And if no, make a change. And I'd say that meditation was probably the biggest game changer for me, learning to be present in this moment, and to stop thinking about the past or the imaginary future or the things outside of my sensory perception that were not really a part of my physical reality, like stress, worrying, money problems, bills, what I have to do tomorrow. Those things became a thing of the past for me, because in this moment right now, none of that exists. It's just thoughts that I was stories, imaginary scenarios that I was creating. And when we think something, the brain has no choice but to create an emotional response and focus on that energy and attract those situations into our experience.
This is so uplifting for me because I believe in the spiritual realm very much so, because it begs to ask that question: what is your belief about death? And do you believe that the person energy dies? And the scientific answer, you can tell me what you believe in.
I believe in the facts. And
Okay.
we all learned in third grade that everything in this universe is made of matter.
Yes.
All matter is made of atoms, and atoms are energy. And every law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, it can only change form.
Yes.
So we literally are balls of energy walking around in a bag of bones and blood and skin. And when our physical body expires, that energy becomes one with everything that is, was, and will be. And it took me many years before I actually started to feel and experience her energy and see the signs. And I have some amazing stories that me and my children have experienced, like asking for the rain to stop and the rain stops and there's four rainbows in the sky, or asking for a sign and things magically appear in front of us, seeing repeating numbers, hearing songs, feathers, hearts. And I know beyond a doubt that she is here with us, guiding us and protecting us every step of the way.
You answered my question very well. Thank you. I believe in that as well, and I know that there are always signs. When my mom and brother passed away during the pandemic, I used to have blue jays keep coming and showing up into my yard and saying, "Good morning, how are you doing? I'm checking in on you." And that's really important for those people that don't believe out there. That energy is eternal. They live on
Absolutely.
forever. And just to give you that hope of inspiration to continue on your lives in a great way. And
Yes.
there's something that is called the rites of passage, and that we are all born, and at some time, these bodies are going to expire, but we'll transform. And I call it going back to the Star Nation,
Yep.
going back into the universe, and they're always looking down on us. And I wear bright colors so they can see us. That's a belief that we
Me
have.
too. I started wearing bright colors. I used to always
Yes.
wear black, but
Yes.
now I wear bright colors. I wear crystal bracelets, and
Yes.
I know that she's with us always.
And the hope that they want for us is to continue living our lives
Yes,
happily.
absolutely.
So, what advice would you give to people that are sitting at home right now in their conundrums with the grief? Like, how am I going to get through this? What advice would you give someone?
The first thing that I would say is what you choose to think about and tell yourself creates the reality you experience. The subconscious mind has no choice but to believe everything you tell it. So if you say, I can't, your brain's automatic response is you're correct.
Hmm.
And a lot of people use that statement, I can't, I will never, I won't, it'll never happen. And I say, stop using those words and just replace them with the word yet. You haven't healed yet. You haven't experienced these things yet. And the more you tell yourself that you want to heal and that you're going to heal, the closer that becomes to reality. Because grief is not something that is created by loss. Grief is triggered by loss, and it's something that we create. with the things we choose to think about. And if we can focus on the love that will never go away, the good memories that we'll never forget, instead of focusing on that one moment where your life changed, and to set the intention for healing, and just to know that it's coming one day. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be next year, but it is coming. And just try to live your best life the best you can.
And I just wanted to add to that. I have some incantations that I utilize that really have helped me to propel my healing journey. I am healed. I am love. I am infinite. I am energy. My loved ones love me from a distance, no matter where they are, in this physical realm or the spiritual realm.
I
So those are
absolutely
really
believe
important.
in positive affirmations as well, and I use them
Yes.
every day. My first thing when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I say is today's going to be a great day. I'm grateful for life. I love myself. I love my life, and good things come to me every day.
Yes. So it's what you put out there and what you kind of like the effect of the when you throw the the what is it called? The
The
boomerang effect.
boomerang?
Yeah. So you
Yes,
throw out there the good thoughts and the good emotions and that you'll get it back.
absolutely. They call it the law of attraction, and in
Yep.
physics, it's actually a law that like energy attracts like energy.
Hmm.
And literally you get what you put out there.
So the next question I have is how do you and your children remember and honor your wife's memory?
We don't think of her as missing, first
Okay.
of all. She's not gone. We didn't lose her. She's not, missing out on the milestones in our lives. When we go to the park or the zoo or on vacation, we know she's with us. We know her energy is there. We know that the good things that are happening to us are because she's influencing, reality for us. And we don't wait for the words and numbers on the calendar to tell us what to feel. We talk to her, we talk about her, and we think of her with love and gratitude every day the same.
Fabulous. I think that really shows the resilience and also demonstrates how people can utilize these tools and healing mechanisms to enforce in their own lives.
Absolutely.
So, if you had one last comment to tell the audience, what do you really want for them to learn from you? If they could take one piece of advice from what you're telling us.
I would probably say be present in this moment because it's all that's real,
Mm-hmm.
and try not to look towards the future through the lens of what you think, feel, and believe today,
Okay,
because it'll all be different tomorrow.
fabulous. No day is ever the same, right?
Not at all.
We choose our destinies.
Absolutely. The thoughts we think today create what we experience tomorrow,
Yes. And sometimes we have to create that picture of wellness within our own self. And what does
even
that
before
look
we feel
like?
it. Yes,
What is the outcome that you want for your life?
absolutely.
And write it down and keep working towards that. And one day you will feel it.
Absolutely. One of the exercises that I use with my clients is I tell them to write themselves a letter from future self to present self, describing how amazing life is since they healed. And I
Yes.
tell them to be very descriptive, what their life looks like, what their house looks like, what their job looks like, what their relationships look like. And every time they feel hopeless, to read that letter and ask future you How did you get there? What did you do? And to do those things now and create that future self.
And another thing that I do is I wrote all my loved ones a thank you letter, never a goodbye letter, like the therapist suggested.
Mhm.
So if people want to reach out to you, Jay, how can they connect with you?
I can be found on selfloveandmindsetcoach.com or on Facebook, Self Love and Mindset Coach, all one word.
Okay, and what services do you provide?
I am a self-love and mindset coach, and I help not only people heal from grief, but I also help people who are struggling with self-esteem issues, lack of self-love. I teach meditation and mindfulness, and I have several groups on Facebook of my own, and those links are found in my cover pic. I have a positive memes group for daily inspiration that has grown to nearly 7,000 members in the last few years. I have a group called Learning to Love Yourself, which also has several thousand members for men and women both who have problems with self-acceptance, are in toxic relationships, or just have overall problems enjoying life. I have a group, grief support group for young adults, for children who have lost friends and loved ones. And my newest group, Life After Loss, is a group, it's not a grief support group, it's a healing support group for those who are ready to take that step and to leave their grief in the past.
Great. Well, thank you very much for sharing all the wonderful services that you offer. And if any of you would like to contact myself, I'm Lise with LR Wellness, and I'm a social worker of over 30 years, and we brought you this because we really are out there to help people to heal their grief. And Jay has his expertise in dealing with, the suicides and, life after loss for anyone that wants to heal. And there's a male perspective, there's a female perspective. So I feel there's more than enough of people out there going through different things that when we come together, we're much more powerful. So by sharing your story today, validates to me that we can heal together.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. This is the ending of our recording now. And thank you for tuning in, everyone. So I just